No one investigates like News 4. Tonight, the Buffalo police officer accused of kicking and slapping a suspect in this cell phone video has resigned. Good evening, everyone. John Cirulli pleaded guilty just a short time ago.
We learned today that he has stepped down from his position with the Buffalo police. Now, this is a big development in a case that News 4 has been investigating for weeks. We have a team of reporters standing by at federal court, and we begin with News 4's Luke Moretti live in downtown Buffalo. Luke?
Yeah, a lot of activity down here today, Jackie. Obviously, we're standing outside of federal court in downtown Buffalo. John Cirulli walking into court just before 4 o'clock this afternoon, pleading guilty to 2 federal misdemeanor charges. I am joined by Ed Dranch, who was in the courtroom earlier this afternoon to listen to some of what was said in there and basically how this went down. Ed, what can you tell us about
Luke, this is really the first time that we saw John Cirulli publicly since that video aired earlier this month on Channel 4. You were one of the people to break this story. John Cirulli was very quiet inside the courtroom today. He had nothing to say other than to answer the questions that the federal judge, Judge Scretany, had to ask of him, which were pretty standard questions. Now, John Cirulli walked into federal court with nothing to say, as you mentioned, alongside his attorney, Rod Personius. He resigned on Friday. That resignation was actually filed on Friday to the Buffalo Police Department. In court today, he pleaded guilty to 2 misdemeanor civil rights violations, and he was suspended without pay until that resignation. The video of the attack was recorded on April 19th. It was of Cirulli stomping and slapping John Willett, is what it appeared to look like back in the Riverside neighborhood on the corner of Ontario and Philadelphia streets. Willett ran them from police, which is what we learned today. We also learned today in court that it was, in fact, John Cirulli who is responsible for also hitting John Willett inside the police car. And that is new information that we hadn't heard up until today. We also know that he pleaded guilty to those 2 misdemeanor counts of violating civil rights. He'll be back in court in late September for sentencing, and he could face up to a year in prison for each count, so 2 counts total, possibility of 2 years maximum. I asked U.S. Attorney Bill Hochul about that, if he could wind up serving any time in prison, and Hochul ultimately said that it's likely he could face time in prison. I asked if he will, or is it likely that he might not serve any jail time, and he said that is also a possibility, but based on civil rights violations in the past, the 5 that the U.S. District Attorney's Office has prosecuted within the last 5 or so years, they've either been sentenced to jail or home confinement.
Yeah, and also the judges have that the federal sentencing guidelines that they have to follow on these types of cases and all cases that come before them.
Exactly,
so,
and the judge said that he would ultimately take that into consideration. Hochul also was quick to point out that it was important that this was recorded on cell phone video, and really that goes to speak about the citizen journalism aspect of all of this and how important it was for you to get answers to that.
Yeah, we had to, you know, this first surfaced on YouTube, as a matter of fact, and then John Willett, who is the person that you see in that videotape being arrested and so forth, did come forward after a while. We're going to talk about him in just a little bit because we have some new information that we're going to be providing to our viewers tonight. Some things that he talked with us about that we're now going to bring forth for the very first time. I can also tell you that our Rose Ciota had a chance to talk to Rodney Personius, who's the attorney for John Cirulli. Rodney Personius telling Rose Ciota just after this court proceeding ended that, quote, this was the proper thing to do for his client, his family, and the other officers of the Buffalo Police Department. Personius also saying that this was an isolated incident. This isn't sort of like a widespread thing. You know, of course, there's a lot of conjecture out there about, you know, does this happen more often than not?
Well, and the interesting thing here, too, is that U.S. Attorney Bill Hochul was also quick to point out that Dan Dorenda is doing a great job weeding them all out, weeding these bad apples out, so to speak. We've seen in the last couple of days with the indictment of a couple of officers yesterday, and today the plea of guilty to these misdemeanor violations. So, Luke, really a big day in federal court.
Really? Okay, we're going to come back to you later, Ed. Thank you very much. You know, the man at the center of this video being seen arrested in that video is John Willett. News 4 was the first to interview him on camera and actually get his side of the story weeks ago. He had a lot to say about what the video shows, but tonight, for the very first time, Willett is talking about what he says the video doesn't show.
Dude, look, they're hitting him. Officer, please stop. I'm begging. Please just stop. Just stop. Just stop hitting me. That's all. That's the only thing I wanted.
John Willett, the man in the video being arrested by Buffalo police on April 19th, had quite a story to tell News 4 investigates.
For them to put, you know, their hands on me the way they did, it just didn't make sense.
Willett claims there was a lot that happened that night in Riverside, things that the cell phone video did not capture. For one, he says Officer John Cirulli kept hitting him in the face after he initially refused to give his name. Willett says it happened while he was in the back of a patrol car, still handcuffed.
The officers in the car, they told me just give him my name, don't antagonize him, because he's going to keep beating me, they're going to keep hitting me. And they said, you know, the faster I comply, the faster I can go down to the holding center.
Cirulli is the officer seen slapping and kicking Willett as he lay face down on the sidewalk, already handcuffed and under arrest. Police say Willett bailed out of his vehicle at Philadelphia and Ontario streets and ran. They say he struggled with officers and had to be forcibly subdued and handcuffed. Willett insists that he did not struggle with police once they caught up with him.
I stopped and I put my hands up. And then that's when I got the first swing to my face.
But why were you running?
I ran because of the fact that I did have some type of drugs on me.
In fact, police say Willett was found with heroin in his pants pocket and crack cocaine inside the vehicle he was driving. Willett says he made a decision to stop running and surrender in a highly visible place.
Let me stop running here on Ontario, where somebody could possibly catch a video of me, you know, if they do try to, you know, beat me or anything, versus running into a backyard where none of this would have got caught.
Willett says at one point, after the situation cooled down, he sensed that Officer Cirulli felt bad about what happened.
I asked him if he could do me a favor. He said, yeah. I said, can you give me a cigarette? He said, yeah, I'll get you a cigarette. He said, why did you run? He said, we was just coming to tell you to, you know, pull over. He said, I'll go to court for you. He said, I'll tell him to drop the disorderly conduct charges. I said, it's up to the DA. He said, no, it's up to the arresting officers. He felt so bad for me after it was all said and done that he went at 4 o'clock in the morning to my girlfriend's house to let her know the car was impounded and I was currently in jail.
Why did he feel bad, did he say?
Because I think my eye was bleeding, my face was swollen, everything was bad, and he could tell I wasn't, you know, I'm not a bad kid. I'm 22 years old. I'm not a bad person. I just got caught, and, you know, it's just a lesson learned. He could just sense it.
Now, John Willett has his own share of legal troubles as a result of that arrest that happened on that day. Willett was actually in city court on Wednesday, yesterday, to plead guilty to a reduced charge of heroin possession. He could get jail or probation. He says his focus is on getting a job once this is all over. As for Cirulli, he says the officer, quote, knows he was wrong. I'm joined by Brian Botig now. He is the FBI special agent in charge here at the Buffalo Division. Thank you so much for joining us. How difficult is it for you to have to go out and investigate other law enforcement people?
It's unfortunate. It is a difficult task, but it's a responsibility that's bestowed upon the FBI to enforce the civil rights laws of the United States, and one that we take very seriously. And it's just as important to make sure that we don't have any lack of confidence or trust in our badge-wearing members of law enforcement in this country.
The videotape, in this particular case, central, right? I mean, how much of a role did that play in your investigation and what you were able to glean and develop leads off of that?
Video evidence is very valuable in these cases. However, we'll work these cases when we don't have them. And in the history of the FBI, for the century we've been working civil rights cases, we've worked them without video, and we'll continue to work any type of claims of civil rights abuses.
Yeah. There is a relationship now that is in place between the FBI and the Buffalo Police Department. I know you had a news conference the other day talking about relationship with Dan Dorenda, the police commissioner, and exchange of information going back and forth. Talk to us about that. What's happening there?
Always had an outstanding relationship with the Buffalo Police Department and Commissioner Dorenda since I reported here in Buffalo. In fact, the night of this incident, when he called me, he said, hey, Brian, this is the third call I've made. The second one was to Bill Hochul, the third one was to me, and I'm sure the first one was to his supervisor with the city here, with the mayor. With regard to this case today, the Cirulli case, is this it in terms of criminal investigation? Do we expect there to be other arrests, or this is it? The investigative process is concluded in this case, and the proceedings today, Mr. Cirulli took responsibility for all the actions, and we don't see any other federal charges stemming out of this. Okay. Brian Botig, the special agent in charge of Buffalo FBI, we appreciate your time. Thank you very much. Much more to come on this. Obviously, we've been conducting interviews after the court proceeding. We're putting all of that material together, and we'll bring it to you throughout the hour, and of course, the latest coming up at 6 o'clock. For now, we're live downtown at Federal Court. Luke Moretti, News 4 at 5.